Welcome to a special episode of Apex Mountain. Today we are joined by a very special guest. She was a creature costume and special effects costume maker for movies including Star Wars, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Batman Begins. Her podcast, Trip Report, is out now. On her podcast, she interviews recent travelers to give you tips and ideas on your own travel inspiration. You can find the podcast at tripreportpodcast.com as well as Spotify, iTunes, and Google Play. And check her out on Facebook and Instagram at Trip Report. Please welcome Emma Brassfield.
Thanks so much for having me,
Welcome.
guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. For those who don't know who you are, would you mind talking maybe a little bit about what you do?
Sure. So I make creature costumes and special effects costumes for films and TV. I do the odd bit of theatre, but it's mainly film and TV that I work in. So I can do anything from a kind of kids TV big creature suit to a well-known superhero and everything in between.
Wow.
That is awesome.
That's cool.
So I guess how did you get into this business to begin with?
So I went to London College of Fashion and I did a degree in costume makeup and special effects, and I did a year and a half of costume and then I did a year and a half of special effects. And when I say special effects, it's special effects that you would normally know as obviously like blowing things up and explosions. So it was the kind of animatronics and creatures effects.
Wow.
Gotcha. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. And then, so I did that as a degree at London College of Fashion, as I say. And it's changed a lot over the years, but when I was there, it was great for having lots of outsider tutors come in that have a real handle on the industry. They were constantly working in the industry and then took a day out to kind of teach us, which was really fantastic. So when I graduated, one of them actually gave me a job in their workshop, and I was just kind of, while I was there, I was doing lots of, low budget, no pay kind of jobs just to get a CV. And then when I graduated, I applied to be a trainee on the next Harry Potter, which was Harry Potter 3, Prisoner of Azkaban. And I knew a lot of the previous years had gone on to do that. So I knew that that's kind of a good way to get in. So I applied for that.
That's hitting the ground running for sure.
Yeah. So I applied for that and didn't hear anything, just kind of carried on plodding along, doing like low to no paid jobs, just kind of making ends meet. And then around the I think it was about September, October, I got a letter, from the guy that was heading up the creatures department on Harry Potter, called Nick Dubman. And it was just kind of a general letter saying, great, you can come for an interview. Thanks very much for your application. So I was like all excited, like amazing, I've got an interview, rang them up, and I just could not get through the kind of gatekeeper, if you like.
Right.
And she was like, call back in 2 weeks, call back next month, call back tomorrow, and this just went on for like 3 months, literally. And I just kept calling and was getting quite disheartened, especially because I knew kind of students in the year above were already on the film and that it started up. And I knew that some of my peers in the same year had got a traineeship already and they'd heard back and And then eventually I got hold of his personal mobile number, and I was kind of a bit wary, but I just called him up and just kind of said, look, I'm trying to get a hold of you, come in for an interview. And he said, yeah, you can come tomorrow. So, which was awesome. Yeah. So I kind of like panically got everything in gear. And then typically I remember my alarm didn't go off. I got lost. I was literally an hour late for this interview. It was just a nightmare. And where the studios are is where the Harry Potter tour is still, in Leavesden near Watford, just outside of London. And it used to be that there was no signs, of course, because there was no tour there. It was just a sort of small film studios. Not many people knew about it. And it was really hard to find. So luckily he was really forgiving. And he looked through my portfolio and he said, okay, great. I'm going to get my head of fabrication, which is the department I wanted to work in, because there's kind of mini departments, which I'll go into in a bit. But
sure.
He said, oh yeah, I'll get him to come and look at your portfolio. And unbeknownst to me, he'd actually been to my graduate show and had already seen my portfolio.
Oh, wow.
And he was just like, oh yeah, I've seen this. It's great. And I was like, okay, I've never met you, but. And then I got home, and I think it was literally like a couple of days later, I got a call saying, yeah, you can start in January.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's kind of where it all kicked off.
Okay.
Was as a trainee on Harry Potter, and then it kind of snowballed from there.
I'm sure you learned so much on a set like that, just right out of the gate.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. And it was, I mean, you don't get so many traineeships anymore, and Nick Dunman is really good. I think he still does it, I'm not sure, but he was great for having these traineeships on Harry Potter that really helped people straight out of uni get their foot in the door. And it's all about who you know, and it just kind of snowballs, from there, really. So
that is
cool. I was lucky, yeah.
This is Jacob. I was just gonna jump in with a question, and not to sound like I'm just running on forever, but when I think of art or something, I think of someone's expression of what it is that they're trying to convey, and normally it's by themselves. When you think of, literally painting or something like that, it's all within one person's imagination. For one, you have to talk with directors, people over you, on how they want it to look, which also kind of, I think, would add a depth of complexity. And also, I imagine you're not the only person working on whatever costume or creature it may be, depending on the film. I saw, for instance, on your IMDb, it says like you worked on padding for some things. Can you explain just a little bit to people listening as well as us what it entails? I guess, how does collaboration affect your work?
Oh, absolutely, hugely. It's probably, other than skill, it's probably a number one factor. I mean, if you can't work as a team, if you can't get on with other people, you're just going to be out on your own,
Right.
Being freelance, I don't think I know of any job offers that are permanent. Nearly every job is freelance. So if you don't fit in, they've got quite an easy get out clause.
Right.
They can just say, you're not needed anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so important that you can get on with people. You can get on with a huge variety of different personalities. There's some big personalities you have to work with, and know when to kind of speak up and when to just bite your tongue, which sometimes I struggle with, I must admit. But so collaborating is, it's a massive part. Like I said, I mean, there's just so many people that go into making a character. It's rare that I work on my own, to be honest.
Right.
Like you say, I do like some paddings sometimes. Like I did some paddings for The Crown TV series. I think it's on Netflix.
Love that show.
And I've never actually watched it. Paddings, things like that. I can do that at home because it's just me. Everything is done under my umbrella of being a fabricator, if you like. And obviously I have to go in and do fittings and speak with the designer and make sure it's exactly how they envision they want that particular padding to be. It has to be, it's all done to measurements, but there may be that, there's too much, I don't like that bit of fat under the arm. Can you take that out? Can you add to that? All the different parts. But generally, as I say, it's a massive collaboration. I mean, on Harry Potter 3, I think there was 140 people in the creatures department.
Oh my gosh.
Alone.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So that's kind of made up of a lot of different departments. So you've got kind of, they're all under, like, obviously the designer, and then the designer will convey to the concept artist what they want to have achieved. It's slightly different in different departments. So obviously in creatures, there isn't really an umbrella designer generally. There's quite a few different designers, and often the sculptor will design their particular character as well. But then within a costume department, you have a costume designer and a supervisor, and there's different kind of hierarchies. But yeah, in the creature department, which is the main kind of area that I work in, you've got kind of, as I say, you've got the designer, you've got the concept artist, you've got the sculptors, you've got the mold makers. These are all like mini departments as well. And then you've got the foam or silicon departments, and they've got guys that pour the actual foam or silicon into the molds, make sure that they're all like pristine. And then you've got the animatronics designers, who are like the mechanics that figure out all the inside workings. And then you've got the fabricators, which is the department that I'm normally in. And we do the kind of soft sculpture, all the sewing, all the foam sculpting, basically anything that's kind of fabric. But we also do, like, say a foam suit's being made, we figure out how to get the actor inside and all the fastenings and make it all invisible so you can't see. And then you've got an on-set department, which might be us as fabricators, or it might be a mechanic that goes on as well, or it might be handed over to the on-set costume or wardrobe team. And then, of course, you've got makeup artists in case they have prosthetics on their face or their body. And then you've also got like the office team as well, that are running all the logistics of all this, and the buyers and the runners, and then obviously all the different supervisors. So it's,
Very
even within,
complicated.
it's very complicated, and it's a massive team. So like I say, it's so important that you can get on with loads of different people, loads of different hierarchy structures, and you can communicate really well.
When you go to start looking at that fabric and you start doing the soft sculpting, do they generally come to you with an idea? Here's the colors that we're looking for, here's the fabrics we want you to use, now go and do it? Or is it kind of you still have that creative, that somewhat decision making from one fabric to another, little details like that?
So it really varies. So as I say, I work in different departments. So sometimes I work in the costume department, which is kind of what I call like straight costume. So it'll be literally like dresses and, suits, but that's a massive like umbrella, so that's across the spectrum. So it could be like a period show like The Crown, or it could be like, sci-fi like Batman or something, so it could be in the actual costume department, or sometimes they have a break-off department, which is like the costume effects or costume special effects. Or I have also worked within makeup special effects, they call us, even though I'm not a makeup artist. And then there's also, as I say, there's creature effects. Sometimes, rarely, we work in special effects, which, as I say, is a whole different ball game altogether. That's more rare. And then also there's the wardrobe department, or the on-set costume. And wardrobe is sometimes confused with costume, in that wardrobe look after the costumes and costume make the costumes. But still, on-set could be called costume rather than wardrobe, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah.
So it varies. It varies hugely, yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. Is I know you talked about a lot of different collaborations. I'm sorry, this is Zack, by the way. But like, how much have you done where you get to design like free realm? Just you have your own. There's no restrictions. Like, have you done a lot of work where you get to do all that your own, or is there a lot of influence that's already being driven to most of the work you do?
It's almost always already kind of thought out. You don't get a huge amount. So in reference to the last question, I guess I didn't properly answer that properly. So,
you're fine.
Yeah, it does depend, as I say, on the project. And so usually within costume, it's very honed down. They know exactly what textures they want. They know the fabrics they choose, everything. Sometimes we'll have a bit of R&D and we'll be able to play with different things, but ultimately the designer will choose exactly what they want.
Sure.
Or they'll steer you, they'll say, well, I kind of like this, but I want it a bit more like that. Can you go find that? Or the buyer will come and say, look, we've got these different things. Can you play with these different things?
Sure.
But again, that depends on the project and the budget and the time restraints. You don't always have the time to do that. But within creatures, they will usually give you a concept art. And again, it depends on the character. So if it's a fully sculpted body, then obviously that's restrained by what the suit's going to be made out of. Is it going to be silicone? Is it going to be foam? Or do we need to bulk it out with our own soft tech, if you like? There's so many different products that we can use to build it out so that it's not as weighty. We always think about, how the actor has to move when they move their body on the inside. The suit might be, like 6 inches away from their body,
Sure.
and their movement has to convey to the outside. So what are we going to fill within that? And that will be up to us. That will be our decision. So it's a bit more creative in that way when working with creatures, if you like.
Very neat. Okay. Thank you.
That makes a lot of sense. I was going to ask you more, how much do you feel like you spent time with the cast versus just other people on sets working on, the back end of things? Like, how much are you, like, especially when you're working on, you said that you're not actually like a makeup artist necessarily, but you do things that are tied closely to that.
Yeah.
I mean, do you spend time with the actor or actress themselves, or is it mainly behind the scenes preparing for them to come to set?
Again, it depends on my role on the project. So it depends if it depends on my role really. But basically, if sometimes I've made things and then I've taken them onto set. And when that happens, obviously I have a large part in the fittings, and depending on how much I'm making of the suit depends on whether I'm going into the fittings. Due to the hierarchy in costume, I often less go into fittings in the costume side of things, because the designer can do all the tweaks, or the cutter will go in. Again, there's a different hierarchy, as I say. So the cutter will go into the fitting usually, or I'm usually like an assistant maker in costume, because that's not my kind of main genre of work, if you like. But when in creatures, I'll often go into the fitting because I've made the tech that's underneath. So that's my kind of mind working. So I will know that if you take off an inch here, add an inch there, that's going to portray to what the actor needs to do, how he needs to move, or what the director wants, or the different kind of things. So yeah, if I'm obviously taking the costume on set, then I'm looking after that actor one-to-one. But it's rare that I work with like directly with A-list actors, or any kind of big actors, because I work with, people that are in suits. They're called skin artists or performers. So I work with those guys that you would never have heard of, unfortunately, because they're amazing performers, but you won't see their faces, so.
So you talk about not really being around the actors and things like that. Do you have like kind of a surreal moment that you can think of on set?
Yeah, I do. So I've written this down so that I don't name anyone. So that I don't slip up.
We don't want to get you in any trouble.
Right.
No, I don't want to get into trouble. I've signed so many NDAs, it's ridiculous. So yeah, it was with a certain A-lister who I won't mention, but he'd been filming for a while. So he'd not been filming for a while, and he came back onto set to do a scene which had led on from a bit of the story which we'd already shot the previous week, and we had to use his stunt double because obviously he wasn't there, and it was like a far away scene, but enough to see what was going on with my character. But I guess he didn't know that we'd already shot that scene when he'd been off. So I was copying a continuity photo quite closely to make sure that what I was doing, this part of the costume obviously needed to look right, and I was sort of taking care of it. And it was just me, this A-lister, and the character I was looking after, and we were in a really small part of the set, and then there was this kind of wall, so much so that I had to kind of squeeze through them to get in, of the camera operator, the boom op, the director, the first AD, like it was really small, and then there's kind of all these like quite high up people right next to me, and this A-lister kind of said really loudly, "It hasn't been established yet," kind of insinuating that what I was doing wasn't that important, like just get on with it, because when you establish a scene, you create how that scene's going to look. So like all the continuity goes from that established part. So he was kind of saying, you can get on with it and go, kind of thing. And I had to kind of really stand up to myself, which was quite scary, because I've been working alongside this guy, but I had no reason to speak to him for anything really, so you don't speak to him. But I've been working alongside him for a long time, and he'd never spoken to me apart from that point. And I had to really stand up for myself, because I don't want to be made like a fool of in front of everybody.
Sure.
So that was quite surreal, that I had to kind of go against someone who
stand up to an A-list celebrity.
That I'd kind of idolized.
Yeah.
Sure.
But
Wow.
yeah, that was definitely surreal. But yeah, I'm happy to say I won because I was
Well,
like,
good. Good.
I had heard on one
good
of your
job,
first.
good job, really. Otherwise, I would have been out of my year.
I had heard on one of your first podcast episodes of Trip Report, you just kind of mentioned that you don't get starstruck very easily. Was that something that's always been how you felt, or did that just kind of develop as your career develops? And when you see enough people acting normally, maybe that some of the shine rubs off.
It's hard to figure that out. I don't know. My dad's in the music industry, and so I've kind of grown up with stories of A-listers in that world kind of doing various things, and he's always kind of sort of said to me, you know, they're just normal people. They're no different. So I don't know if it's just having grown up around that or what. I mean, of course I get a bit like, oh my God, that's so-and-so, you know, but when you're on set, you can't be kind of all fangirl, even if
Right.
you are like, oh my God, I've watched your films all my life. You're amazing.
Yeah, right.
You
Yeah.
just can't do it because they're kind of hounded on the street all the time. They come to work and they need to be professional, and sometimes they're getting in the zone, you know, and they don't want to be kind of dealing with that as an extra thing. And also it's
Sure.
seen as very unprofessional. So you kind of have to, if you are that way, and I've seen a few people that have been that way, but you know, and different actors react to it differently, but you can't, if you're working alongside them, you have to sort of keep it inside.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
makes sense. Do you have a favorite? Well, I don't know how to phrase it. Just like, is there a favorite movie that you've ever worked on? Like that you could just say all together, everything that you've ever done. Or if you can't say, you don't have to tell us specifically which one it is, but do you have one, and can you explain maybe why it was your favorite for whatever reason?
That is such a hard question. So I have a few. I'd say my favorite kind of first set, it wasn't the first set I'd been on that, but the first set that was kind of like wow was on Batman Begins, when I saw the Batcave entrance, you know, and that was just like wow, because I'd always wanted to work on Batman.
Okay.
You know, and that for me was kind of like the best job to help make the Batsuit, and to see that in the flesh. You know, I had this great boss who kind of took me under his wing. Shout out to Day, Mr. Day Merch, and he kind of always, you know, took us around the sets at lunchtime, and he just knew, everybody knew him. You know, he's this amazing character that just, you know, you remember him, and so he just knew everyone. So we'd go onto all these sets, and I remember, and he's the only cast, I don't know if this still stands, but he was for a long time the only cast or crew that had done all the Batman films.
Oh wow.
Oh wow.
He'd done every single Batsuit, you know, really amazing. And so he just knew so many people, and he took me on to see that, and that was just really like a wow moment.
Awesome.
And I
Right,
had only
amazing.
been working for a couple of years at that point, so that was
Right.
kind of, like I say, amazing to see. But in terms of it's so hard. Like, I worked on this kids show called In the Night Garden. I think you guys have that over there.
I haven't heard of it.
And it, you know, like that was amazing because we worked on that filming alone for a year and a half, and then we were making it for like 8-10 months, I think. So we became this kind of real family, and we all moved up to Stratford-on-Avon, so we all kind of, you know, had all this social life along with it, and we got into this rhythm, and it wasn't 9 to 5, but it was very much like, you know, we stopped at certain times. We hardly ever went over filming, which is unusual because we were getting into this rhythm because we knew it was for the long term, and that was really special. You know, I've got lifelong friends from that, so you know, there's a large part of me that's a favorite. And then, you know, there's this show called Yonderland. Again, I don't know if you guys have that there, but that's a comedy show, and I think it's the only comedy show I've done. But so that was really different, and it's made by the guys that do Horrible Histories,
Okay.
and they're just such a fantastic team. They're hilarious, off camera as well. And I don't know if it's different generally working on comedy, but the whole team just gelled really well. The creature department, our kind of puppet department, was just a brilliant kind of dream team. Everyone got on really well and did a fantastic job. So that's a definite, favorite. And then I have to say, obviously, Star Wars, because it's so iconic.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Seeing those iconic sets was really quite amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. Different
So
reasons.
so shout out to Jacob's wife Jordan for talking with you online, kind of getting this set up. We were kind of taken back when we had first talked to you and you said what all you've done. Do you ever have or talk to anybody and they're like, wow, did you check out that movie? And you're like, yeah, I worked on that movie. Like that was mine.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm proud of what I've done, and but I do. It's hard. Like sometimes, you can't just kind of barrel in there and go, oh, I've done X, Y, and Z, And then some people, like, I can't remember. It was only like a couple of weeks ago. Someone was like, I can't believe you never told me you worked on that. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna like, reel off my CV when I meet you.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't come across very well. So yeah, like sometimes people will mention stuff and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad that you love that because I made the head for that or whatever.
Wow.
Right. You said that you didn't watch the TV show that you had worked on. Is there, and this is just setting everything aside and just purely from just a movie quality, TV show quality standpoint, is there something that you've worked on that is just your favorite to throw on every now and again and just be proud that you're part of it and just enjoy it on a different level, whether it's the, an instant classic like Star Wars or Harry Potter or something a little bit more obscure that just brings a smile to your face every time you watch it?
Cool. I think Night Garden always brings a smile to my face because I remember that, I was stood behind that tree or whatever, like trying to hide from shot. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything that I've worked on that I've not been proud to be a part of, even if the experience hasn't been the best. And that obviously, as with every job, not every project is amazing for various reasons. So I'm still proud to see it and feel really lucky that I'm a part of it and that my name's in the credits, even if sometimes it's not. I feel proud to have been a part of that history, and especially when people talk about it, yeah, it's a good feeling to know that I was part of it, even a small part.
Was there a particular set that was the most daunting? I mean, you've been on some pretty huge ones, and I always go to think about like director's cut, extended cuts of Disney movies, like Endgame is the biggest example I would probably guess. But there's so many people on set, there's so much going on, everybody's running different directions. I'm sure it feels like it'd be easy to just get lost in it. Was there one set in particular where you were just like, wow, this is crazy?
I mean, they're all a bit like that when you first go on. I think going on to my first set on Harry Potter, that was like, wow, because it wasn't the first one. So obviously I'd seen the first two and, or at least the first one. I don't know if the second one was out when I was working on it yet. But yeah, that was kind of like, oh my God, they're all, like Harry and Hermione and Ron are over there. And, that was, and not wanting to step out of line, and there's different hierarchy on set, you never really speak to the first AD, you go to the third AD first, or the runner, or it's just making sure like that you're not going to step out of line, because you always feel like it's so easy to do that or be in shot, like you don't want to be the person that the phone goes off in the middle of a scene or your alarm or something, or one of those kind of things. There's all those kind of things that runs through your head. I think every set is like that, whether it's a big film, prestigious film, it all costs so much money, so you don't want to be the one holding up filming.
Right.
Is the hierarchy in these movies similar movie to movie, especially when they're that size, or is it something you have to get used to every time you hit set? That there's
no,
a
it's
different
nearly
person
always It's
Okay.
nearly always the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So according to your IMDb, it seems like you are in a lot of superhero movies. Is that your specialty or a coincidence or?
Just requires the next
I
creature.
don't know. It's just kind of what's happened, really.
Okay.
Yeah, creatures, and then I suppose because it is more like the costume side of it, like, and there's not always creature films going on, kind of
Right.
thing. And they usually need a fabricator on superhero films because of all the different techniques that are needed, rather than just plain sewing. We have to do, kind of really detailed gluing and, like I say, like padding, muscles. All these superheroes, they're not as ripped as they look. Yeah, so all these hidden kind of corsetry that you don't know about on the men as well, and muscles and all of that. It's all, yeah, it's
That's
all
awesome.
there.
Kind of taking a step back to what you were talking about earlier, you seem like just a premier professional, honestly, with just everything that you've said and what you've talked about with hierarchy, and you don't want to be the person to mess up a scene or things like that. Is that something that you learned from mentors over time, or is that just something that you knew, going through your training and like, this is what I have to be, and it was easy for you, or is it, how did that kind of come about?
Honestly, they didn't tell me a huge amount of what it was like when I was at college or uni. They kind of hit on it a little bit, and we got kind of inklings of what was going on. But I remember on Harry Potter, and I think this is the only time I've ever heard this kind of speech, was from Nick Dubman, and I don't know why they don't all do it, but I guess because there were so many trainees and things on that. But he kind of was like, if you can see the camera, it's likely that the camera can see you, things like that, like don't stand in front of a light. And you just kind of learn it through experience, as well as like on the job learning. You quickly learn from, you never go onto set, or rarely go onto set as a trainee on your own. Like, that would be really unusual. So there's always someone there that's kind of looking out for you, if you like, and teaching you the ropes, and they'll teach you kind of all the different, those kind of things, or you don't. And also, if you were going on as an assistant, you wouldn't be speaking to the ADs, the assistant directors anyway, kind of thing.
Right.
So you just kind of learn it as you go, if you like.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes you'll be making something and they'll say, oh, it's a background character, and so it's kind of implied that it's not needed to be as detailed. But you can bet that when you go onto set, the director will be like, I want that guy out front. So you always have to, everything that, even if it's not seen, it has to be like really detailed and on point. Not always, of course, like sometimes it's like really honed down,
Right.
because of budget restraints and things, but generally every single little detail. Like, I remember on Star Wars, I did this kind of extra character, if you like, and he's got this kind of helmet, and I did all these kind of like ruffles underneath that you would never even see, like it's dark, the smoke,
Right.
there's explosions, like you'll never see it. And I spent like an hour and a half or something making this thing perfect. So it's
That's
all those
awesome.
kind of details that you'd never even see. And yeah, so that, and then also how much kind of goes on that you don't know about. Like, I've been on two different jobs that kind of spring to mind, situations that spring to mind. Was one that wanted literally overnight, they wanted a full color change on the suit that we made. And we all had to, like, they say jump, you say how high,
Right.
because it has to be done because they're the director, or sometimes it's down to the artist as well, the performer, the actor. They want that change, and they can demand that change, and you have to kind of go, okay, yeah, we'll get it done. And your life just gets put on hold.
Pretty stressful.
It can be quite stressful, yeah. And another situation, which is not down to anyone's fault, but they were filming abroad, and this actually, I won't mention the film, but they were filming abroad, and they're filming abroad, and they lost a whole load of prosthetic pieces. So and it was a different every day had a new prosthetic piece to be used.
Wow.
And so a whole load of people had to work like literally overnight to get these new things made so that they could be shipped out again, so that not a day was lost filming down to us. So it's like all these kind of different things that you don't think about, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never would have thought of that.
Yeah, definitely. That's really interesting, though. I think all of it. Like, I like to hear that kind of stuff about any aspect or something that's always just front and center, and then understanding what goes behind it, the logistics and everything else. So,
Oh, cool.
yeah, it's really neat to have that perspective.
What the way I worded it initially was, what are some aspects of the creative process that you wish the average moviegoer kind of knew about? But you can take that question any direction you want. What's something that would benefit everybody if they knew going into a movie as massive as, Star Wars or Harry Potter?
Well, I guess a kind of common misconception is that the costume designer makes everything. Like most people think, like because the costume designer is the one that gets the kind of awards, the BAFTAs and the Oscars and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So they just think, a lot of people label me as a designer, and I totally get it, because that's all that people hear about. But
Right.
as I think I mentioned before, there's so many different departments that are underneath, there's so many people, in that massive kind of wheel, and the costume designer is like the figurehead. Although obviously I'm not belittling what they do at all. What they do, they do a hell of a lot of work, and it's their vision and everything. But I just wish that people knew that there's so many people underneath them that help them to create their vision. It's not them. They don't literally sit there and sew and make these things.
Right.
So I guess I'd like people to kind of be aware of that, and just like how many different kind of jobs there are. Like,
Yeah.
I think some people just think, I can be a costume maker or costume designer or makeup artist, but actually there's all these kind of different jobs that people generally fall into because they don't know about them.
Right.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I think your story is good for someone maybe wanting to get into that industry, of perseverance, of never quitting, and just kind of keep sticking at it, and then eventually, you get to where you're at. And so yeah, that was really neat. I didn't know anything about that going in. I don't know about you guys, but
No,
I didn't know anything about that.
I think a big part of it is because of where we're from. I mean, we're middle America, Illinois. No one's making films here. And if they are, they're doing it as quick as they can and getting the hell out. So, it's one of those things that if you are someone in this area that is interested, it's hard to even know where to start. So anything that you have to say about that and how to get started is going to be super beneficial.
Definitely.
So I was an exchange student in Illinois.
Oh,
Really?
wow.
Oh, where? Where
in
at?
Crescent City.
The north?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, by
yeah.
Chicago? Yeah, it's Chicago.
No, it's not Chicago. No, I'm trying to think where it was near now. Where the big nearest town? You'll have to look it up. It was really small town.
Was it?
There was like 500 people.
That's how big our town is.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Whereabouts are you guys? Are you guys more south?
We are about 4 hours south of Chicago. We're actually closer to St. Louis.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
This is, let me see. I'm looking it up now. It's close. It's north of Champaign.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, north of Champaign, kind of same distance away from Bloomington and Peoria, but
Gotcha.
Cool.
Gotcha.
Kankakee, near Kankakee.
Kankakee, yes.
Yeah.
Kankakee.
Awesome.
Yes.
That is interesting.
Yeah, that is fascinating.
That's too north for me. I'll still call it Chicago, but
Yeah, we're down south and we're lazy about it, and then anything north of Champaign is just one huge Chicago area.
Well, anytime we leave Illinois, they're like, "Oh, you're from Illinois. You're from Chicago, huh?"
yeah, you're like, no, absolutely not. Absolutely
I've
not.
been there like 3 times.
It's funny, we had a foreign exchange student as well at our little town, and she was from Norway, and I did not understand how that process started and why she picked our little town. So
Well, I didn't get to pick, so she probably didn't get to pick either.
Oh, that's true.
Like my
Sorry.
host family. That's all right, it's not your fault. No, it's fine. No, I had a great time. The host family kind of picks you. You kind of, I guess, they get like a load of people on paper, and they just pick you from that, which is kind of a bit scary when you think about
Yeah.
it.
It is.
At 16. But yeah. Yeah,
Neat.
but anyway, we're going off track.
We are.
Sorry. I guess the other thing that I kind of I had no idea about before going into the industry was continuity. And I was always kind of like, maybe a bit know-it-all, like shouting at the screen, like, oh my God, like, their hair was like, in front of their eyes on one shot, and then the next shot, it's like,
off to the side.
in a ponytail or something.
Yeah.
And how did that happen? Like, how could they, it's so obvious. But actually, when you're working, obviously most of the time it is in sequence, but sometimes you could be doing a scene like I explained about the surreal moment that I had. You could have a scene where you're shooting it, you're establishing it one week, and then the following week you're literally picking up from where that left off. And it's just that character's turned around.
Yep.
And so, you have to take a lot of photos, but sometimes you can't get in there straight away to take that exact shot. So I guess I naively didn't understand or appreciate any of that. So, I guess that's another thing that I think is quite interesting for people if they don't know that or don't realize that. And also, there could be a stunt double, put in there for different reasons. Or a body double, or there's so many different things that could make a continuity error. And it is getting, obviously it's a lot easier now. It happens less and less with all the technology and things, and big films do pick up more. I suppose it's more TV that they have more the continuity errors.
Right.
Especially with movies and TV shows with so much fighting, chaos, explosions, car chasing, that kind of thing. Like Guardians of the Galaxy, I imagine from beginning to end of that movie, continuity errors would drive someone crazy.
I didn't do any on-set work with Guardians, but there's any of those kind of big sci-fi films. There's so much going on, so it's quite hard.
Right.
I guess something that people don't think about is that the performers get really, really hot. Obviously, most of the time I'm working with people that are in big suits. Foam latex is completely unforgiving with heat. That nothing comes out unless there's a hole. So all sweat, everything like that, it's like a wetsuit stays inside. So they get super hot and sticky and gross. So, as part of my job is to keep them cool and keep them hydrated and kind of give them what they need. So a lot of times they'll have like big character hands, or they'll have like silicone hands on, so they can't physically do stuff, and if they need to go to the toilet, we have to get them out. So sometimes, like in the Night Garden, we had breaks. It was so well scheduled because the whole show is around the suits. There was no other actors involved at all. There was just these kind of 6 main characters. So we had, we did the morning, then we had a break, and then we had the like after the break, and then we had lunch, and it all worked like clockwork. And also you can't be in the heads for very long because some of them weigh like a stone.
Wow.
So I don't know what that is.
I think
Sounds heavy.
With
like
you guys,
20 pounds or something.
Yes, it's a lot. So because they've got all the mechanics inside and they have to do different things. And in the Night Garden had these amazing electronics where they didn't always use them, but if the actor talked, the mouth would move automatically. They didn't have to do it. And then they had the hand controls as well. So it was all this amazing technology, and the mechanics are always pushing the envelope of what they can achieve with all the, R&D they can do. I mean, look up BB-8, such an amazing creation that the guys did. But yeah, so something that people don't realize as part of my job, as well as like looking after the kind of physical parts of the costume, repairing those parts if they go wrong, is the kind of looking after the actors, making sure they're okay and their well-being is okay. So we carry around often these kind of fans which are made from literally leaf blowers, or adapted torches with computer fans as well we've used, and you know, in between takes we open up their neck. Often we can do that, or put it in the mouth of the character. They open the mouth, and sometimes you'll see, and actually I can send you a picture that I've got of me with Chewie actually doing this, where you know, as I think it's through his neck or through his mouth, but I'm blowing in air just to keep that air circulating, keep it moving, cool them down. And we can also use these cool suits as well, which are either made by companies, or I've made them bespoke as well, made some bespoke for Batman so that he could have them like inside the pecs of the suit, like inside the pec muscles. And that is a suit that has kind of tubes running through it, and then you have a machine and it pumps ice cold water through those tubes next to as close to the actor's skin as possible, and then pumps the hot water out and then recirculates it. But there's like different actors like different things, because sometimes that is viewed as not being a good thing for your body, because it can plunge your body from the two extremes into hot and cold. So it just depends on, and sometimes they just have that as a kind of safety net, that they can have that if they want to have it. I don't think Christian Bale ever used his pec cool suit. But yeah, so I guess that's something that people don't always think about. And another one, like I said about the hands, like one time I had to literally take hair out of a performer's mouth, because the cameras were rolling and he had hair in his mouth, and he was just like get this hair out of my mouth. And you just kind of don't think about it. Like, you get so close, you're almost like their right arm. You get so close to the performers that you're looking after, because they're so reliant on you.
Right. You don't even think twice about it.
Say it again.
You don't even think twice about it. You just help them when they need it.
Yeah.
Then after the fact, it's weird.
Yeah, and then afterwards you're like, that's really weird. I just stuck my hand in some guy's mouth because he had a hair in his mouth. Not some guy, obviously, but yeah, so that's kind of a bit weird. Like sometimes, and I've heard people like literally having to take chewing gum out of people's mouths in the middle of a set and have to walk through everyone, you know, things like that. So that's kind of a strange part of the job that you don't think about when you're on set.
Interesting.
So I guess it kind of doesn't really change. The creative process doesn't change. Like, it changes from theatre to film, in that theatre is far more forgiving, of course, because you're further away. You don't have to do these minute stitches, and you can get away with a lot more. Film is more detailed, and then of course you've got IMAX as well. You know, like on Batman Begins. I don't know if you know the scene, but Samuel L. Jackson opens the drawer, and it's got what we call the pre-suit, the bat suit before it's painted, and it's kind of silver clear. And I had to do all those big stitches. There's like silver stitches stitching it all together, which obviously doesn't then go into the main suit. But when I was doing it, they're like an inch big, the stitches in real life. And then I went to see it in the IMAX, and they were like, you know, a foot big. Oh my God.
That's awesome.
So you just have to, you know, constantly thinking like, oh my God, like IMAX, or, you know, now with HD, like how crazy that is, and how you have to be so careful. The first HD thing that I worked on was in the Night Garden, and I remember it just being like, you know, they're going to pick up like butterflies and flies and all these kind of things, and if they're picking up all that, like what else are they going to pick up on? And Iggle Piggle in that show, there's this character called Iggle Piggle, this kind of blue teddy bear.
Sounds cute.
And he's cute, and he falls over all the time, and you see his feet, and he has these red feet, and obviously where the pressure of the actor's foot is going through the sole of the shoe, where that's going through, obviously the more pressure it made like a footprint shape, his own footprint around in the middle of this like round pad. So when he fell over, it was just like I could just constantly see these like human feet shape, and it didn't matter how many, and we were on our knees like with baby wipes and everything. And I guess that also, it kind of goes back to the previous question, like how like people think that my job is really glamorous, and sometimes it is glamorous, you know, like sometimes you pinch yourself. Like on Star Wars there was a different treat. JJ Abrams, the director, he was just so good to his crew, and he arranged a different treat every kind of Friday, I think it was. And like one week we'd have like a vintage ice cream van, and another week we'd have like I can't even remember, like a waffle truck and like all these stuff, and you just go and get all these treats. And I remember one day there was I think it was JJ's birthday, so a star on another film, who I don't know if I can mention, but an A-lister, had sent over this like afternoon tea kind of cupcake stall to be there for our crew. So we had that, and then our crew, because it was his birthday, had arranged this amazing burger company which are like really renowned. They came and we had all these burgers. It was just like, oh my god. And then like we had a magician called Dynamo, I don't know, I think he's international, Dynamo, who's just like mind-blowingly amazing, and he came and visited the set, and we had like a private magic show. And actually that's quite a funny story, because obviously when you're looking after a suit performer, like I have to get that actor out of the suit, and so we're often kind of like a makeup artist, we often stay a lot longer than the other crew. And so Dynamo was on set doing this magic trick with all the, you know, the stars and the main kind of crew, and I really wanted to see it because I really liked him as a magician. And so I got Chewie. I was looking after Chewie, so I got him out of his suit, and then I kind of raced up to set, and I'm like 5'2". Chewie's obviously, well, he's like nearly 7 foot. And then my colleague is 6'2", 6'3", I think she is. And so I was kind of like jumping above all these guys to try and see. And then the crew, the guy in front of me, like all kind of like not worded, because obviously we were all listening. He was just like, oh, you can go in front of me if you want. So I went in front of him, and then the other guy in front of him turned around to see what was going on. He said, oh, you can go in front of me. And then anyway, I went like 4 people deep, and I was right at the front, like next to, you know, Harrison Ford and JJ and everyone. And I just kind of like ducked down, like, oh. And then I ended up like getting a card and all this like really cool stuff. And then at the wrap party for episode 9, Dynamo was actually going around the wrap party doing magic, and I told him that story, and he kind of gave me a high five and was like, oh, that's really cool that you get to see me and stuff. So that was, you know, there's stuff like that is like, you kind of pinch yourself and say like, wow, I'm so lucky to be given this opportunity, I'm so lucky to be here. But then there's other times when so I can tell you this funny story about when I was on Night Garden, and I'm sure Nick, who was Iggle Piggle, who was talking about, won't mind me telling you, because it's quite funny. But he's an amazing skin artist, a performer that goes into these creature suits, and he's done loads of Star Wars. I forget the name of the character. He was like the monkey character in Star Wars. Forgive me for not knowing the name.
I don't know either.
I'm sorry, Nick. But he's just like done so many amazing things. But he started off on In the Night Garden. That was kind of his first big break. And he, you know, we were filming in the middle of the summer. We were all outside, and it was like 36 degrees Celsius or something. It was really hot. And obviously he's like this big teddy bear, so he's like he's walking around with a quilt on, and he's got mechanics in his head, and there's no air to breathe unless the mouth's open. There's like no air coming in, and obviously the mouth's not always open. And so he's like super fit, but he was like so hot and sweaty, as they always are. So I always say to people, like, you think it's glamorous, but actually I get covered literally in other people's sweat. And because some of the stuff you have to do, and you just don't have time to like even think about it. Like, so anyway, so he came out of his suit, and, you know, like I say, we were kind of like a family on that job, and he came out of his suit, and they wear these kind of like all-in-one, almost like a cat suit. just we call it underwear, but it's not obviously underwear. It's like long sleeves, long trousers to wick away the sweat.
Yeah.
But it's just like cotton. So he just literally had that on, and obviously when you're working out whatever, you have like patches of sweat. You can see it visibly. Well, his suit was completely changed color. Like there was not like an inch that wasn't covered in sweat.
Holy cow.
And he just grabbed me. I was in like shorts and t-shirts. T-shirt, and he just grabbed me and would not let go, and oh my god, and then he like ran off laughing. This was like lunchtime. He ran off laughing down the garden, like off to have a shower, while I had to work the rest of the day.
That's hilarious.
So yeah, people always think it's completely glamorous, but it's not always.
That's awesome.
Hey,
Yeah, I'm glad you did bring that up because, yeah, hanging out with JJ on his birthday.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
no big deal.
Well, he was working still. I guess it wasn't that great for him.
Yeah, true.
Well, I see that when researching you a little bit that you've got a few side projects that I wanted to give you a little bit of time to talk about. I saw Studio 7T7, the letter T, 7.
Yeah.
And I also saw, Tanner saw Colorful Faces. Can you tell us a little bit about those two projects?
Sure. So I'm a mum now. So obviously the film industry, it's getting a lot better, I'm very pleased to say, but it doesn't bode too well with being, a mum and school and stuff, nursery. So when I had my eldest, who's now 9, I set up Studio 77 as a kind of way to be able to dip in and out of the film industry if the film industry would have me part-time, which at the time they didn't really. I was still working full-time, but I wanted to start it off as a kind of way to not work full-time in film industry. And so I started it off then, and I make toys, hand sew all the toys. I make them all myself.
That's so cool.
Thank you. And it took off really well. So then actually when I was on Star Wars, it was starting to gain momentum, and my daughter was 3/4 at that time. So it was getting to the stage where I kind of was like, I need to be at home more. So I quit to the industry, in quotation marks, around that time, and decided to kind of pursue that and see where that would take me. And everyone was really supportive, and they said, if you ever want to come back, the doors open, kind of thing, which was amazing.
Wow.
And so I did that for a few years, and as I say, that was great. And then when I was doing that, the film industry as well was slowly starting to realize that, hang on, there's all these, especially fabricators, but not solely fabricators, of course there's women across the board, but that are parents that can't do these full-time crazy schedules. So we're going to have to kind of think about having people on part-time, and also sometimes that works with the schedule as well. They might not need someone in full-time. So they're slowly, definitely much more open to that now. So when that started happening, I then got offered a job part-time. There happened to be a lot of projects on at the time, and someone just rang me up and offered me, like, what kind of hours can you do? We'll take anything. And I was like, wow, brilliant. So then, and that was, I was due to go and work on The Mummy, and that fell through literally like 2 weeks before. That's the thing about this industry. Like, I had everything lined up, I had childcare and everything, and then due to different reasons, it fell through, and I was a bit gutted. But then the colleague, she said, look, I know this other person that's looking for people, so why don't you just give her a call and see if she needs a part-time worker. So I did, and it worked out amazingly, because The Mummy would have been like an 1.5-hour journey every day, and this other job was at the same studios as Harry Potter Leavesden, and it was like half an hour. Oh wow. So it just all worked out for the best. But so I started up Studio 77 with that in mind, and then it kind of, as I say, it got momentum, and then I'm now changing it slightly and going off track a bit with it and changing it to be more tutorials. So I'm teaching people how to make the toys that I sell with the view that they can then sell them. So I'm doing YouTube tutorials and selling patterns as well.
Wow.
So, but that's kind of been shelved a bit because obviously I've started the podcast, Trip Report. So that's kind of my new baby at the moment. But then the face painting as well. I used to be a face painter for 10 years, and I started that off just before I went to uni because I wanted to do originally special effects makeup. And I thought, well, that would be a good way to practice. I can, paint kids until I go to uni and everything. And then I realized that I preferred the sewing side of things. So that kind of obviously changed course, but it got me through uni. It got me through the beginning stages of my career. And then when my career took off, I stopped because, I needed to be available at weekends and stuff. And then since my youngest daughter's was born, I've started that up again. So I've been painting again for another 3 years. So about 13 years altogether. And so then, with all these different kind of pies, if you like, I just kind of juggle it all around the family, and I go back part-time to films every now and then as well. So.
That's awesome. So I'm kind of curious where 77 came from.
It's not as exciting as it may sound, sadly. I used to live at number 77.
Oh, okay. Okay, fair enough.
Don't anymore. Yeah, and literally Studio 77, all the kind of domains and everything had gone, so I changed it to 77.
Okay.
Which I'm not sure was a wise decision, but there you go. It's stuck.
Awesome.
Clever.
Well, the move a little bit towards your podcast. I have been to Disney World a few times, and actually I'm planning on going again this coming February. And what I gathered from listening to one of your episodes is that you've been since they did the Star Wars Land and Avatar. How did you feel about Galaxy's Edge at Disney World? Because from what I can tell, it looks absolutely perfect. Yeah, if you could just take a minute to talk about the marketplace and Millennium Falcon and all that great stuff.
Sure. Well, it is as amazing as it looks. I can tell you that. Yeah. So I guess you listened to the first 3 Disney episodes
I did.
that I had. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because obviously I went, and the other lady that I interviewed, Amy, she went in February as well. So there'll be lots of tips for you on those. But it is spectacular. It's all the detail is just on point. It's literally like walking onto a set, except for, every now and then there's kind of toilets and, a stall selling blue and green milk. But the Falcon is just amazing. I mean, obviously it's different. The real Falcon has only got like the 2 seats. And this has got like 5 or 6, I think it is. So there's minor things that there's no way that they could have changed it, but the chessboard seating and all that is just so amazing. And it was quite surreal sitting at the chessboard, because I obviously sat at the real one, when we were filming, we'd just like sit there if they were filming on the opposite side or whatever, we were waiting or what have you. And yeah, it was quite surreal kind of going back there, because obviously that's a few years ago now. And I worked on episode 7 and episode 9, and I didn't work on the kind of spin-offs or episode 8. So on episode 9 I was part-time, so it was a very different experience. I didn't do any on-set work really. So the last time I'd seen it was on episode 7, and yeah, it was quite special to be like, wow, these people have experienced this, and I was a part of making, not the originals obviously, but the recent films.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool.
That is awesome.
Disney World has always just done everything to a T. I knew what they were going to do was going to look great, but just watching videos and stuff of walking through the marketplace and seeing places to eat and all the crazy looking food, and I mean, they always surprise me somehow.
Yeah, and I have to say as well, I think Universal doesn't always get the credit that it deserves, because the Harry Potter stuff there is just as mind-blowing. The theming is just so on point, and I had the same experience, going through all the Harry Potter stuff. It was just like, wow. Yeah. So it's so well done.
I had been there once. There's I mean, I really enjoyed all of it, of course, but when you hit the Harry Potter, it's worth the admission. I mean, the Harry Potter part, just like at Disney, is just absolutely perfect. As soon as you hit the train and then everything past it.
Yeah, it's really clever. All the different technology they have is just amazing.
That's awesome.
Well, who's going to be coming up next on your podcast? Where are we going this time?
Next, we have a lady called Lillian, and she talks to me about her trip to Pennsylvania, which was really cool because so my podcast is all from Brits' points of view, because there aren't that many British podcasts that talk about trips. So it's to inspire people, not just British people, but people traveling from Britain, obviously, that will have a different kind of journey and different reasons for going and different time restraints and budgets, etc.
Sure.
So she went to Pennsylvania for a week, and it was just interesting as to why she went. You know, it's kind of a random place for you to go, really, I guess. But actually, when she talked about it, I was like, oh my God, I want to do that trip. Like, it sounds really cool. So we've got Lillian on episode 6. And then we've got another trip to Antarctica, which is really interesting because Sophie, she was a doctor on one of the ships. So she was like a volunteer crew member. And so I talked to Sho on another episode who went to Antarctica, and his episode is really interesting as well, of course, because I mean, not many people, you don't normally meet people that go to Antarctica.
Right.
And so that was fascinating. And then when I got hold of Sophie, I was like, wow, there's like 2 people that I can speak to. And it's really different, her experience, because as I say, she was a doctor, so she wasn't going as so much of a tourist. Like Sho's a photographer, he went there to photograph Antarctica, whereas Sophie went to be a doctor. That was her main role. So yeah, that was fascinating, and I'm excited to edit that.
That is
soon.
awesome.
Yeah.
My stepmom is from Pennsylvania, so I've been up there many times. So I'll be interested to listen to that one.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go to Erie, and when she said she went to Erie, I was like, oh, that's cool, but I think it was more Erie, Indiana that I'd heard of.
Yeah. That's awesome. Cool.
But yeah.
Well, thank you again for showing up and giving us your aspect on, what happens backstage on these movies that people really don't listen to or hear about. If you guys are interested, you can check out our podcast at tripreportpodcast.com, as well as Spotify, iTunes, and Google Play. Check them out on Facebook and Instagram at Trip Report. Thanks for listening to another episode of Apex Mountain. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter at Apex Mountain Pod. If you have any input on this podcast, you can give us a call at 307-696-2650. Thank you very much for being here. We did have a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.
All right. Cheers.